I never thought I'd find myself telling this story, especially not at my age, but here I am, 67, a widow of 6 years, and still trying to understand how everything unfolded the way it did. My name is Evelyn, and I live in a quiet part of Seattle. Life had slowed down since Robert passed. He was my husband for over 40 years, and after he died, I convinced myself I'd had my share of love. My world became smaller: morning walks, tea on the porch, and polite small talk with neighbors who never stayed long. Then came him. He moved into the duplex next door on a Thursday dot. I remember the day because I had just come home from the farmers market and the arms were heavy with bags. I didn't expect help. Not anymore. But he jogged over, smiled, and offered to carry them for me. His name was Leo, early 30 South, maybe with kind eyes that didn't seem to judge me. I thought he was just bi neighborly. I thanked him, and that was supposed to be it, but something above him stuck with me. Maybe it was how Helen drew to ask if I needed any thingles, or how he called me ma'am without sounding condescending. Doc. The next day, he was out sweeping his front steps when I returned from my walk. We exchanged a few words. It was casual, but then it became routine. One day, it was coffee on my porch. Another day, he brought me leftover lasagna he'd cooked. He said it reminded him of his mother who had passed recently. I listened and listened. Back and somewhere in all those shared moments, I felt something warm unfurl in my chest. I told myself it was maternal. It had to be, but I started noticing things. How I changed me dress before he came over. How I wore me nicer earrings. How I brushed my hair before opening the door. I hadn't done a fad in years. There was no shame in it, just a strange flutter of anticipation I wasn't used to. He noticed too. Has started complimenting the sun of my tea, the softness of my sweaters, the way I told stories. I should have stopped to fear. I knew better, but I didn't. I kept inviting him in, laughing longer than I should have, letting the warmth grow. I told myself I was just being kind. He was young, alone, and trying to start over. I didn't ask about his past or his relationships. I didn't want talk, no, because deep down I was afraid of what the truth might ruin. Leo started showing up more often, and I didn't question it. At first, it was small things: asking to borrow tools, offering to trim the hedge, checking in after a storm. But slowly, the visits turned into conversations, and the conversations turned into comfort. He told me he was between jobs, that Thessity had worn him down. His voice carried away. I recognized the sound of Simeon trying to hold it together. Ich knew. That sounded too well. One night I made dinner for the both of us. Nothing fancy, just roast chicken and vegetables. But he said it tasted like home. That word home, it stirred something in me. We sat there for hours talking about books, music, and moments regretted. He told me about a girl I had dated. He didn't call her his girlfriend, just said things had gotten complicated. I didn't press. I didn't want to ruin the peace we had found in each other's company. What made it worse was how easy it all felt. There was no flirt, no pretending. He laughed at mysteries, and I listened to his silences. It had been so long since someone had looked at me like I was still here. Not invisible, not old, not broken. And I saw him too, not just as a young man, but as someone who was lost, searching for something solid. We filled in each other's gaps without meaning to. It told have stopped there. A friendship, a sweet connection. But the way he touched my hand when he passed me a cup, how his eyes lingered when I turned it away. The softness in his voice when he said my name, it blurred everything, and I let it blur. I never imagined myself meeting anyone again. But the truth was, I craved the way he made me feel seen, valued, maybe even loved. He started calling me more, sometimes just to talk, sometimes just to sit quietly on the porch together, and I welcomed it. I found myself waking early to check if his lights were on, feeling disappointed when he wasn't around. I knew something had shifted. This wasn't kindness anymore. It was attention. Intention dot, and no matter how many times I told myself it was harmless, I knew exactly where it was heading. Still, I said nothing, because admitting it meant I'd have to stop it. And I wasn't ready to asterisk lose the only thing that made me feel alive again. It happened the night he showed up at my door, soaked from the rain, shoulders tense, eyes red. Hadn't say much, just that he needed a place to think. I let him in with a hesitation. He sat there quiet like he was holding back something. Heavy. It powered him a cup of tea, and for a while, neither of us spoke. Then he said that she had left him. Not officially, but she'd stopped answering his calls. They'd been on and off for a while, but this time felt final dot. He told Mesh it said he was too unstable, too unsure of himself, and he admitted she wasn't wrong. Then he looked at me in a way I'd never seen before. Not like a neighbor, not like a friend, but like Simeon who saw through everything it tried to hide. I didn't know what to do with that. My heart was beating in a way it hadn't in years, and I hated how much I liked it. He moved closer slowly, carefully, and when he reached for my hand, I didn't pull away. He said, "You've been more real with me than in your notes." I wanted to believe it. I wanted to believe that what we had wasn't just a fragile moment between two broken people. But even as I let myself fall into that illusion, something in me whispered that this was a mistake. It held me like I was still someone worth holding. Not out of pity or confusion, but need. I told myself it wasn't physical. It wasn't about desire. It was about connection. But I was lying to myself because deep down I knew he was still attached to someone else. Maybe not officially, maybe not clearly, but she was still there. A shadow neither Ophis acknowledged dot when he left that night. He kissed my cheek and said, "Thank you." That kiss stayed with me longer than I wanted it to. I kept thinking about what we'd done or hadn't in the line we'd stepped over. The guilt didn't come immediately. What came first was a surge of something dangerous, hope. And that was the worst part, because I had no right to hope for anything. I knew this wasn't Abigening. I knew I wasn't his future, but for the first time in years I felt wanted. And I let that feeling wrap itself around me like it means something. Even though I already knew I did in single quotes T dot, it all came crashing down 2 weeks later. I was sitting by the window when I saw her mid-20s, slim, confident, and walking straight up to Leo's door with a suitcase. She didn't knock like Summy and everything. She entered like someone wanted earning home. My stomach turned, but I didn't move. I watched her kiss him, note in the cheek, not politely. It was that kind of kiss that answered every question I'd been too afraid to ask dot dot. He didn't look surprised. He looked prepared, as if this reunion had been in the works all along. I wanted to believe he'd come over and explain, that he'd knock on my door, say it wasn't what it seemed. But hours passed. His light stayed on, and his door stayed shut, and I stayed alone. Again that night, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat with the silence, trying to figure out which part hurt more, the betrayal or foolishness of thinking. I was immune to it. I remembered every smile, every word, every accidental touch. I thought about the way I had let myself believe it mattered more than I did. I had ignored signs. I had wanted too badly to feel something, anything, that I'd accepted. Attention without questioning cost. Days passed and we never spoke again. He didn't come by. He didn't text. And I didn't chase him because I knew now I was never the one. I was a pause in his chaos. A temporary place to feel safe until what he really wanted came back. And the worst part, I let him willingly. Dot. My daughter visited the following weekend. She told me I looked tired, asked if I was okay. I said yes, because how do you explain to Sumi and Evo love that you fell for a man half year? Age knowing it was never real, and let it unravel everything you'd spent years trying to rebuild. This wasn't a love story. It wasn't even a fling. It was a reminder. Cruel and sharp that loneliness makes you vulnerable. That being needed feels dangerously close to being loved. And sometimes you don't know the difference until it's too late. I moved on slowly, quietly. But something in me changed. I became more careful, less trusting, not bitter, just aware. Because the truth is, love can find you at any age, but so can deception. And sometimes they wear a thighsome face.